The anchor element in HTML allows us to link to other web pages or websites. So as you can see, I've created a few HTML files and a couple of extra directories. So we have a home directory and also a content directory that is inside our HTML directory. The anchor element is denoted by the opening and closing A tags. This will render useless until we pass in the href attribute. And href stands for hypertext reference. It is in here that we pass in either a relative or an absolute file path or URL. So let's take a look at an absolute URL linking to Google's homepage. http://google.com. Now in between the opening and closing A tags, we put in some text that will make up the link. So let's save this and take a look in the browser. So if we go and click on this Go to Google's homepage link, it'll take us to Google's homepage. Now what if we want the user to actually stay on our page when they click on this link? Well, we can get this link to open up in a new page using the target attribute. And then we can pass in a value of _blank. Save this and take a look in our browser. Now when we click on this link, it will open in a brand new window, so the user is still actually on our web page. So now let's take a look at using some relative file paths or URLs for the href attribute. So I'm going to go ahead and create two different anchor elements. Copy and paste that. Now, for the first one, we're going to link to the home directory, the index.html file in the home directory. And the second one, we're going to link to the content directory. Right, so to go to the home directory, we actually need to get out of this HTML directory. We're currently in this index.html file and we are in the HTML directory. So what we want to do is get out of the HTML directory and then go into the home directory and then reference the HTML file that we want to use inside the home directory. So to do this, use two full stops, a /, and then we can locate the home directory and then reference the HTML file that we want to link to. So this is essentially saying get out of the HTML directory, go into the home directory, and then load up the index.html file. If we want to link to the content directory, which is inside our HTML directory, our current directory, we can just use the folder name or the directory name. So let's go into our other HTML files and link to the other two HTML files. So now we're in the home directory, we want to create two new anchor elements. We want this first one to go to the HTML directory, and we want this one to go inside the content directory. So to get back into the HTML directory, we simply go back one, because as you'll notice, we're inside the home directory, so we want to get out of the home directory. We want to go into the HTML directory. So we'll type in HTML, then we can reference the file name once we're in the HTML directory. To go to the content directory, we first need to get out of the home directory. So we go back one directory, go into the HTML directory, then into the content directory, and then we can reference the file name. So now let's add these two anchor elements to our index file inside the content directory. So right, go to the home directory. This time we need to go back twice. We need to get out of the content directory, then we need to get out of the HTML directory, then we can go inside the home directory, and then use the file name that we want to link to. And to go to the HTML directory from our content directory, all we need to do is go back one directory, so we're in the HTML directory, then use the file name that we're linking to. Just like that. Let's go ahead and save all three of these files and preview it in our browser. As you can see, now we have a couple of options. Go to the home directory or go to the content directory. So let's try out the home directory. You are now in the home directory. So now let's go back to the HTML directory. You are now in the HTML directory. Let's try out the content directory. You are now in the content directory inside the HTML directory. Let's go to the home directory from the content directory. You are now in the home directory. So you get the picture. We can link to local HTML files using relative file paths or URLs. So as you may have noticed, when I typed in the absolute file path for Google's homepage, I actually had to pass in the protocol. By protocol, I mean HTTP. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. That essentially lets the browser know that we want to visit an external page. If I went ahead and just typed in www.google.com, go ahead and save this, and we'll try it out in the browser, and we'll see what happens. You'll notice that when we click on the Go to Google link, it will actually be trying to locate a directory or file titled www.google.com. So what we actually need to do is pass in the protocol, http://. As you may have seen, there's also a HTTPS, and whether you're using HTTP or needing to use HTTPS to link to an external web page, it's actually determined by the web page that you are linking to. So go ahead and save this, preview in our browser, and now we'll see that this will go to Google's homepage. When dealing with anchor elements, another important attribute is the title. In here we can enter in content, so when the user hovers over our link, a little bubble will pop up and actually render the content that we've entered into the title attribute. Let's save this and take a look at what the title attribute does to our anchor tag or anchor element. As you can see, when I hover over Go to Google, we get this little bubble popping up saying visit Google's homepage. That's essentially what the title attribute allows us to do. This is actually good practice as it will allow the user to learn more about the link that they will be visiting or why they should actually click on it in the first place. I hope you've learnt a little bit about the basic directory structure when working with websites, using the anchor element to link to relative and absolute file paths, opening a web page in a new window, and using the title attribute of the anchor element.